the center coordinated daily management of the drought through a number of specialized teams. The district's operations team reported daily flows through canals and associated structures in each basin of interest. A drought report was developed to track daily water deliveries and generate a weekly report comparing weekly allocations and weekly deliveries. The district's utility team worked with coastal utilities to obtain water level and chloride data on a weekly basis to monitor for saltwater intrusion. Utilities with coastal well fields, no backup well field, and limited connections to alternate supplies were defined as at risk. 4 of these utilities were required to reduce the amount of water withdrawn from their wells. Residents and businesses supplied by these utilities were allowed to irrigate only 1 day a week. Water deliveries from the Arthur R. Marshall Loxahatchee National Wildlife Refuge, Water Conservation Area Number 1, and Water Conservation Area Number 2 were discontinued during this drought to reduce environmental damage. Irrigation, which is a major water use in South Florida, was restricted by a series of water shortage orders issued by the district. As the drought severity increased, restrictions on irrigation for golf courses and agriculture were increased from 15% to 45%. Each golf course had to report water use weekly, and fines were levied for both non-reporting and overuse. Residential landscape watering was reduced by establishing specific irrigation days and hours. When irrigation was most restricted, water consumption reported by Palm Beach County water utilities declined by 25%. Property owners not following watering restriction were subject to warnings and fines. News media announcements, media relations activities, community outreach events, and website information raised the awareness of water shortage restrictions and conservation. Engineering projects helped to improve the water supply in South Florida and the flood control system. Several water utilities that pulled raw water directly from Lake Okeechobee were at risk because the intake pipes were near the water surface and became clogged. District staff coordinated the work necessary to ensure the intakes were lowered and cleaned. A water treatment plant that tapped a deep well water source was completed ahead of schedule to eliminate the local community's dependence on Lake Okeechobee for public water supply. Low water levels in Lake Okeechobee created potential for instability and/or failure conditions at water control structures on the Kissimmee River and downstream of Lake Istokpoga. The district completed 4 projects that raised downstream water levels and prevented failure conditions. At structure S65E, surveys identified a 10-foot deep scour hole 200 feet downstream that was beginning to undermine the spillway's apron structure. This hole was filled with 36 million pounds of bedding stone and riprap. A tailwater weir was constructed downstream to prevent damage from extreme upstream and downstream water level differences during major storm events or drought. Additional activities to augment water supplies were rapidly implemented, varied, and creative. During rain events, excess water was pumped into and held within local canals to increase water levels and provide some surface water supply for coastal communities. Over 14 billion gallons of rainwater was kept from discharging to the ocean. Water levels were so low in Lake Okeechobee that water could not be discharged by gravity. Temporary pumps were installed to move water from the lake to the Everglades agricultural area for crop irrigation. Low lake levels exposed boats, dredges, tires, and other navigational hazards. Many of these items were removed. One project removed more than 5,000 discarded tires from an exposed island. The thriving sport fishing and boating industry on Lake Okeechobee also was adversely affected because of limited access. The district partnered with other governmental entities to dredge 2 lake marinas, improving access. Low water levels allowed archaeologists to survey dry areas of the lake for historic and prehistoric objects. 33 new archaeological sites were found in the southeast region of the lake. Most of these were dated between 1890 and 1928. One site, occupied between AD 200 and 800, produced more artifacts than any other known prehistoric site in South Florida. One relic found was a shipwrecked steam-powered dredge, thought to be a missing dredge from the early South Florida entrepreneur Hamilton Diston. Another relic was probably a catfish boat used at the beginning of the 1900s. Major environmental changes occurred as the marsh and nearshore regions of Lake Okeechobee dried out, resulting in the death of aquatic plants and replacement by terrestrial grasses. Habitat for wading birds, ducks, fish, and apple snails, the food source for the federally endangered snail kite, disappeared. A number of environmental restoration activities were carried out to mitigate these environmental changes on Lake Okeechobee. Over 1,000 pond apple and cypress trees were transplanted in the southwestern marsh of the lake. An additional 1,500 pond apple trees were transplanted on Torrey Island. Exotic invasive plants, particularly torpedo grass, were removed from over 5,000 acres of marsh, 2,023 hectares, by prescribed burns followed by chemical treatment. Multi-agency projects removed mud sediments from over 2,000 acres, 810 hectares, of nearshore lake beds. This has improved water quality and habitat for fish and wading birds in these areas. In August 2008, the drought was broken by the passage of Tropical Storm Faye, which dumped an average of 5.7 inches of rain across the region in just 2 days, produced widespread flooding, and resulted in a nearly 4-foot rise in Lake Okeechobee water levels in only a month. As with the onset of the drought, this event highlights the unpredictability of the weather in South Florida. Communication and coordination among stakeholders, federal, state, local agencies, utilities, businesses, and the public, were critical in responding effectively to this drought. As South Florida continues to grow, the need for water conservation increases. The district has developed minimum flows and levels for the Everglades, a plan for year-round water conservation measures, and a comprehensive communications plan to promote a water conservation ethic among its citizens. By exploring alternative water sources and using water wisely, both the environment and economy can flourish.